In case you are not knowing by now, Sony put out two particular announcements on its PlayStation blog. The first one being that they were going to end support for the PlayStation Store on PS3 and PS Vita, citing that it's no longer viable for them in order to put the PlayStation Store on there because of increasing demands out of the service. That saying, quote, as the PlayStation Store continues to evolve to support modern commerce systems, including updated payment processing standards, PS3 and PS Vita are no longer able to support these updates at the level required. As a result, we will need to close PlayStation Store on these devices in a time frame as follows, and you can no doubt see there. However, that was not the biggest news that PlayStation and Sony had brought up, and this is the one that has garnered the most attention and the most controversy. According to the PlayStation blog, physical disc production is ending in January 2028 for new games releasing on PlayStation consoles. That blog post states, quote, as consumer preferences and the broader entertainment industry continues to shift away from physical discs to digital, physical game disc production for all new games releasing on PlayStation consoles will be discontinued starting January 2028. Following this date, new games will be available on PlayStation Store and at retailers in digital formats only. This transition has no impact on games that have already released or will be releasing prior to January 2028 in disc format. This is a natural direction for Sony Interactive Entertainment to adapt to consumer trends as a general preference for digital media significantly outpaces physical discs. The transition will enable us to align more closely with how most of our community prefers to access and play games today. We'll continue to prioritize our resources to drive innovation in how players can access games and provide choices as to where players prefer to purchase new games, whether that's at a retailer or PlayStation Store. We remain committed to delivering a world-class gaming experience to our fans, and we thank you for your continued support. This has garnered several people in both the press and in business to respond. Now, as of the date of this particular video, we have not heard anything from GameStop just yet about this change. However, GameFly has responded, saying, quote, we are disappointed in the news today about the future of PlayStation video games. GameFly is run by people who believe physical products still matter. It is a belief that has been at the core of our company since day one. We are collectors and gamers and cinephiles just like you. We believe in the power of physical entertainment media. It's why we are committed to renting physical media, be it games or movies, until they pry the disc from our soft, moisturized hands. We also believe in good skincare. As long as games are on disc, GameFly will be here for gamers who know the value of choice. If you're one of those games, we'd be remiss if we didn't point out that you can restart your membership for $2.50, and the rest is a bit of an advertisement, but you can certainly see what they're saying there. And they seem to be getting clowned upon by just about everybody, with the biggest one being Domino's Pizza UK. You remember those were the people that were saying something to Santa Monica Studios for the God of War Lawfrey trailer that was announced. They had this up, saying an official statement in response to trends in the gaming industry. As of 1st April 2027, Domino's UK will cease production of physical pizzas and shift to production of digital pizzas only. Customers will be able to download a full range of delicious pizza codes and, using the power of imagination, enjoy them in an entirely virtual sense. And that got copied by just about every single gaming and gaming related company, with them saying they're going to switch to digital this or digital that. And unless you're one of the few who were actually defending Sony's decision, the majority of people were not happy about this, with Critical Drinker saying, quote, which means we, the consumers, effectively own nothing. We just rent games from you now, and you can revoke or change that rental agreement whenever you want. This is a terrible move, Sony. And this is in context to the news that Studio Canal was pulling its rights from the Sony PlayStation Store, and as a direct result, those who bought streaming rights to those movies that are distributed from Studio Canal will no longer be able to be watched, even if you bought the quote-unquote license for it. And that article does list other times in which Sony has had to pull streaming rights from customers in the past. giving the indication that this has been something that Sony has had a history of, and which might be the reason why a lot of people are not happy about this, about Sony specifically. Even Mighty Keith could not defend this, saying, quote, "The PlayStation we grew up with is long gone, man. What is this idea, SMH? Remove the people in charge who are making these dumb decisions. People have got to get out of this mindset that if something doesn't affect them, then it doesn't matter to them. Even if you are a person that has bought only digital or mostly digital, there's still millions of gamers that buy mostly physical, and this removes that option." And even Trevor Noah, responding to a quote tweet by Techno T, could not defend this, saying that "I completely understand where you're coming from, but for a lot of gamers, physical discs are the only way they could afford to play games because they could get them secondhand. You can also give games to your younger siblings, which is a great way to introduce them to games you were playing. Most importantly, though, we saw from PlayStation this past week, if the media we buy is only digital, it can be taken away from us at a moment's notice with no recourse. Imagine that one day your entire library of games could be deleted overnight because technically you don't own it." Caputa saying how the mighty have fallen, making reference to the PS4 announcement when they were parodying what Microsoft was trying to do with the Xbox One at the time. Pirate Nation reports that GOG shared a clear statement on digital ownership after Sony announced the end of physical disc. They said that even if a game vanishes from the GOG storefront, it never leaves your library. This is how purchased games should work. Even if a game vanishes from the GOG storefront, it never leaves your library, exactly as digital ownership ought to be. And itch.io goes on to say that we don't enforce any DRM for games and stuff on itch.io. Buy, download, and never connect to the internet again for all we care. Now, Pirate Nation had also posted this, saying, quote, "According to Christopher Dring, Sony is currently facing multiple legal cases over claims that the PlayStation Store has too much control over digital game sales. Here are the main lawsuits in the United Kingdom. An ongoing £2 billion or $2.7 billion class action claims Sony abused its dominant position by making the PlayStation Store the only place to buy digital PlayStation games and add-ons. In the US, Sony recently agreed to a $7.85 million settlement in a class action over its 2019 decision to stop retailers from selling digital PlayStation game download codes. And in the Netherlands, Sony is also facing a collective lawsuit alleging the PlayStation Store charges unfairly high prices because of its control over digital game sales." Now, you may think the majority of people are in agreement that Sony is dropping the ball here, but there are a few far between, but there are some that are defending this decision. This person, Broken Games HER, saying, quote, "Haven't bought a physical game since 2019. I really couldn't care less." Invito saying, "I literally haven't bought a physical game since 2014, so I'm not sure why people are so upset about this. I also have Steam, and it's just like using that." But the biggest person who is defending this is this person, Wolverine PS5, and saying, "Newsflash for any PlayStation player threatening to swap to PC over this, or PCMR dudes using this to dunk on Sony about my ownership. Unless you strictly use GOG or pirate games, your games are beholden to not only Steam DRM, but often additional DRM like Denuvo for making releases like Resident Evil Requiem, Back Myth Wukong, Celebrate, etc. So stay out of this, considering PC killed disk drives and games before any console did." He also brings this into equation, saying, "My thoughts on this, pour one out for physical game lovers. On the internet, the 15% are louder than the 85%. I've been a digital gamer for years in PlayStation and PC, so personally I don't care." Bringing up this statistic that 85% of PlayStation game sales are digital, which is something that sparked this reaction from Asmongold.
Well, yeah, everybody's angry about this, but I think that Sony, I hate to say this, I think they're making the right decision. I think that they realize that nobody's buying physical media anymore, and it's not worth distributing, producing, and shipping out all of these copies because people just aren't buying them. If you want to ask and you want to wonder why this is happening, it's your fault, it's my fault, it's our fault. That's the way it is.
Okay, so first things first, I'm pretty sure I'm only hitting the tip of the iceberg as the amount of people who are against this, because I will be here for a long time if I go through every single person that has said something against this. because I could not find nearly anybody who was defending this. I did find a few people that were saying, hey, Steam does this, Steam does that. I'll get to that here in a minute. First things first, though, can we just say just how based Domino's Pizza UK has become? And there were a few other people who have been doing that to the point where it kind of got a little tiresome because everybody was just like doing the same type of parody of this. But yeah, Domino's Pizza did it again. I don't know about how good their pizza is, but yeah, this made me want to get Domino's Pizza now. Anyway, I want to touch upon real quick the thing about what Asmongold said and what the Wolverine PS5 guy was saying. It's 85% of PlayStation games have been bought digitally. I don't know how skewed that's going to be because you have to take into account some games are only available in digital form. There are certain games that you see upon the PlayStation Store or maybe on Nintendo Store or the Xbox Game Store, which are not available in physical form. And you also have to take into account retro games that are only available now through either secondhand retailers or through the digital stores. When you take those into account, that number is going to be skewed. Now, how skewed is up in the air and up for debate because we just don't have that kind of data. As far as I'm aware, maybe somebody else knows how to get that information. And also, I'm not saying that's the only reason, but that's got to be factored into it. And I'm not quite sure if I'm thinking that Asmongold is completely approving of this. I think he's just saying that we could see this coming. The writing was on the wall. They were seeing the data, and that's the decision where they were going in, and it's our fault because we didn't exactly try to buy digital or buy physical formats because of our convenience necessity. We need that convenience of not having to get up to change discs and stuff like that. There's a lot of factors that you gotta put into this whole thing. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, can we just say how dumb this was? There was somebody that was saying that this was a dumb way to announce this. Subi Tech wrote a long post on X, and I didn't want to get too in the weeds about that because it is a long post, and I will link that to you. But the TLDR of all of this is that PlayStation did deserve criticism because of how they went about saying this just on a blog. Like, oh, by the way, this is what we're going to do. Like, they got to really explain their thought process of going into this because, yes, Steam does have all digital, and the DRM stuff is something that has been plaguing the digital gaming space for years with the Nouveau and stuff like that. I don't think Steam by themselves have DRM installed, but they do have games on the storefront that those game companies that make those games will put DRM into their games. And the Nouveau is one of the worst at that. We've seen the horror stories about how people have had issues when that was getting installed, when that was being used. And it doesn't seem like these game companies really care that we have the problems. They feel like, oh, well, they have problems, they must be pirating the game. How do you know that? How do you know that it's not the DRM itself and that we are not honest consumers? How do you have that information? Where are you getting that from? I've always thought that they're using the piracy excuse when it doesn't really exist as a reason why to keep a shoddy, faulty DRM system in play. And yes, it is faulty, but Steam themselves don't use DRM as far as I'm aware. We've seen itch.io and GOG. They've also said, hey, once you own a game, that copy of the game is yours to do as you please, even if you go offline. And there's the difference of why people are so upset about this. It's because of Sony's behavior about this specifically. We've seen them do this. You've seen what they did with this new canal thing, with what they're going to do. And it just seems like they're hearing all of them, all the complaints, and they're not listening to anybody, or they don't care. They're doing this regardless of how we feel. We could shout from the mountaintops about this and they don't seem to care. And yes, this is a far cry from what they did back in the PS4 days when the PS4 was announced and they had all this thing with like, hey, this is how you share games. And that was in direct response to what Microsoft thought they could get away with. This is what Microsoft was trying to get away with on the Xbox One. This is the exact thing. They didn't want you to share games. They didn't want you to use the used game market. And I think I know where the fault lies. A long time ago, people were mad about GameStop specifically. They didn't like the GameStop business ethics. They didn't like how GameStop was doing this or that with what they were believing they were getting away with. And this was back in the aughts, I believe. I believe it was like in 2008 or something like that this became a bigger issue with GameStop specifically, and not just the used game market as a whole. They focused on one particular big company, big storefront that was one of the biggest in that field. But what they did was, okay, we wanted to get rid of GameStop specifically, so we're willing to go scorched earth to get rid of GameStop, not realizing that you're about to get rid of a lot of things just to go scorched earth against one company. And you gave them an inch, they took a mile, and you were willing to say, okay, I'm fine with a mile as well. And I kept trying to tell them back in the odds, back when this is going to end badly. And look where we are. We're still doing this. And we're still making excuses for it. But more and more people, I'm surprised that Mighty Keith was saying something against this. He's probably one of the biggest PlayStation fans. And I disagree with 3/4 of what he says. And yeah, I'm going to continue to disagree with probably 75% or 80%, 9%, whatever, of what he says, because I don't think he has good faith most of the time when he's arguing a point. But on this particular thing, he's completely correct. I'm willing to give him the props for that. I'm willing to give the props to Trevor Noah as well, and you've never seen me do that. I think his tenure on The Daily Show was a complete disaster, and yet he's saying what needs to be said here. And we can agree with people who are normally disagreeable when they're saying the right thing. I would love to see the people who usually try to push back against Critical Drinker to try to say something that he said that was wrong in what he said about this subject, because you know they're going to try to say, oh, well, he's just saying this for this and that, because I don't see anybody defending this. And it's because of Sony's track record specifically. When it comes to that, Steam has nothing to do with this. What you do on digital storefronts of Steam have nothing to do with it. It's because if you think about it, I believe there's a lot of agreements, user agreements, EULAs and stuff like that that say, hey, we have this right and that this ownership is not permanent or something like that, and you can lose access to this at any point in time if something were to happen. It might be worded differently on certain places, but you get the gist of it. I have not seen Steam act upon this. I don't think I've seen Microsoft act upon this. I don't know if Nintendo acted upon this in the past. I think their legal issues have more to do with the emulation and that Powell stuff that's been going on, and I don't think they're going to win that. I think that's going to be the first thing that Nintendo tried to sue that they're going to lose at, which is a rarity because they usually win those things. But I haven't seen any company in the game industry actually act upon that. It's been Sony and only Sony right now that have had this track record of actually acting upon this, saying, hey, we're going to have to take away this, so you're not going to have access to this anymore. So what are you supposed to do? You have to sign that license agreement in order to access your stuff, and there's no guarantee you're going to be able to keep your stuff. And they have proven that they're going to act upon it, and they don't care how you feel. Every person in the world could say to Sony, hey, we don't want this, and Sony's going to say, screw you, we're going to do it anyway. Why? Because we're Sony. We got more money than you can ever think to have. And here's the thing about the ELUAs, has anybody ever read them? I don't think anybody has ever actually stood there, stopped, and just read through the entire thing. And the reason why is because, first of all, the language is way too confusing. A lot of people don't know what some of those words even mean. And even if you are more knowledgeable about that than some other person, you look at those and they try to confuse you by using these legal jargon words that no one but them would know what they mean, and wording which confuses even the best of people. And second of all, have you noticed how long some of these things are? You could be agreeing to a lot of things and never know it because you just scroll down, hit accept, and then when something happens, you go try to make your case and you say, well, you agreed to this, not realizing that first of all, you may be signing away your rights, which that's another rabbit hole you could go down, but also you don't even know what it is you agreed to, because who's gonna read through an entire novel of rights that you need to know about? No one's going to read that because they want to get to the game, they want to get to the movie, they want to get to their music. They have to read an entire novel of War and Peace in order to say, hey, I accept, not knowing what they accepted. And they're hoping that you do that. They're hoping that you never never read that. They do that so you just, oh, I don't want to read all this. Scroll down, accept. And then they got you. The thing about this is, though, is that there are pushbacks going on right now. The EFF, I think, is saying something about this, and I hope they do say something to this. And Sony's getting clowned upon all over, and I think they should be getting clowned upon. I don't know if it's going to do anything because, again, we've seen these companies, they don't care. We've tried to tell the EA so many times about how Madden is not the game it used to be, and they just don't care. And you can't get them to care because as much as this sucks, as much as this is a horrible thing, some of these people on X are right. You're still going to buy the games. But the thing about it is that where else are you going to go? The only place to play GTA 6 is on PlayStation or on console. And you know the controversy that's surrounding that game right now and how they're going about selling it with the $80 gimped version and the $100 full version. And if you buy the physical version, then it's actually not a physical version. You have to go online and get the digital from the physical. I guess that's how you would word that. Now, there is a argument I did see as to why they would do this, and is that because games have become way too big to fit on a normal Blu-ray disc. I think the largest one can't still fit everything that a game would have, that a single game would have, and that would make more sense than what Sony tried to PR through us. If they say, hey, games are becoming too big right now, it makes more sense for us to go digital only because we can't fit everything that we can fit onto these discs right now. Some of these would have to be digital only, so that's the way we'll have to go down. Not like this, like, oh, 85% of our game sales are digital. Well, there are games that you can only get in digital form, so that doesn't really make much sense to use that statistic either, because there's some nuances behind why that is the way it is right now. But yeah, this is obviously anti-consumer, and I don't know if any kind of petition or anything like that, there's a petition going around right now, or any kind of pushback is going to help, because unless there's something that can really get their attention, like a lawsuit or something like that, or EFF getting on their case, I doubt they're going to walk this back, because yeah, they got their own agenda here, and we all know what it is. As much as Sony tries to say that it's not what that is, they're not even addressing that concern. They just put up a blog post and that was it. And lost in all of this about the phasing out of physical media is the notion that they're going to shut down the PS Vita and PS3 access to the PlayStation Store, which I think they were trying to do before as well. And some people did make them walk it back, and now they're trying this again. This time, I highly doubt that anybody's going to really make a statement against this, because they're so focused on the physical disc stuff that's been going on that this is going to fly under the radar. And I don't know if many people are going to care as much about that, because by this point I believe that they got a good case on this one, and I think the PS3 has been long beyond the normal life cycle of that console, so I'm not quite sure if people are going to be as worried about it this time around as they were last time when they were trying to do that. But yeah, I do think it's kind of sneaky that they were going to throw this in with it, because maybe they knew they were going to get so much pushback from the physical disc stuff that this was going to fly under the radar. But yeah, didn't fly under the radar here. So anyway, that's my thoughts. What are yours? Please leave comments down below. Please subscribe and hit the ring bell, and take care of yourself and each other, and I will see you next time.